Can a progressive press like the Dillon 550 load competition level ammo? I know it can, and I'm going to show you how. Let's go take a look. I'm F-Class John for Ultimate Reloader, and one of the questions I often get is, can you use a progressive press to load actual competition rounds on? And the answer is yes. I have done it for years. In fact, when I won my national match in 2023, that was loaded on a Dillon 750. Now, I started out with my competition ammo on a 550, ultimately went to the 750 for the additional speed, but the 550 still remains one of, if not the best progressive press to load for competition rounds, and that's for a couple reasons that we're going to discuss. Now, you've seen me load 7 PRC on this before, and that got us some pretty good groups, and I would say definitely hunting quality ammo. But let's get into the details of how we take this press and turn it into competition level ammo. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Dillon 550, and while I personally load on a 750, I do think the 550 is probably the best press that someone can buy to get started for precision ammo, and there's a couple reasons why. Now, the first one is because it uses a solid base to support your case. Now, in the case of the 550, it is going to completely push and absorb all of your brass as it's going up into, let's say, a sizing die or a seating die, or even into a mandrel or something like that, where there is no deflection in that base that is occurring because the brass can't go anywhere. It's literally pushing against the base of the ram. Now, on something like a 750 or an 1100 or 1050, it is a floating shell holder, so there is always going to be just a little bit of deflection in that shell holder, and therefore the 550 is going to win in that particular case. Something else about the 550, it's very simple. It's an easy tool head. It's 4 stations. You can see here, you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4. These are inexpensive to purchase, and they allow you a lot of customization. Your caliber conversion kits are going to be a lot less expensive for the 550 than some of the other larger presses. And ultimately, because it is not an auto-indexing system, meaning I have to rotate the shell holder with my finger, it is going to lead to a more concentrated process, and it's also going to, by and large, keep you from making mistakes that something that is auto-indexing or auto-driven, where you're not really part of the process, and so you may not understand if something's going wrong. By having this manual indexing, it really is going to keep you involved in the process so that you are getting a better feel for how your sizing is going, any issues with priming, any issues with your powder or seating, or any of the other things that are going to get you there. I also like the 550 because it is a very consumer priced unit. I mean, you can pick up everything you need. I've got the bullet holder. You can get the strong mount for it, bins, handles, like all kinds of stuff, and still keep it in a sub-$1,000 market, which I think is really great for a press of this caliber. Now, actually using the Dillon for precision ammo is going to have you kind of step back a little bit from what you're thinking about when it comes to progressive. Now, normally if I was loading something like handgun, I would throw 3 or 4 dies in. I'd start with empty brass, and by the time the bullet came out, I would have a loaded round. Well, precision rifle ammo is not like that. Now, I could technically start with brass, and I could end up with a loaded round. But what I like to do is really separate this into 2 steps. One is going to be the brass prep, and one is going to be the loading process. And again, because the 550 is so easy, I can have 2 separate shell holders, one for my brass prep and one for my seating process. I do that all the time with all of my 750 processes as well. It's really important to remember that garbage in, garbage out with this entire process, and that means starting with high quality dies. Now, Dillon offers a wide range of dies themselves, and no matter what brand you are picking, just make sure that you are getting the highest quality that you can from that particular manufacturer. I happen to have my own custom dies here, and I am a big fan of them and how they work. The importance being that when you have dies that are made for your chamber in a higher quality capability, they are going to give you more concentric ammo, more consistent shoulder bumps, better seating depth consistency, and ultimately better groups on target. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and get these threaded in, and we're gonna work on the next step here. To get started, we're gonna keep things simple. We're gonna use a wipe-on lube. It makes it easy to wipe it off when we're done, and it's very consistent no matter what you're doing. We've got our case here. We're just gonna put a little bit on, and I'm gonna get a few of these prepped ahead of time just so that I can show you the process here. Now, one of the things to keep in mind when you're loading precision ammo on a Dillon 550 is that you want to keep things moving, but they don't need to be fast, jerky, or erratic. And I think that's, I'm probably gonna say this more than once, but progressive doesn't have to equal speed demon, right? Like, we're looking for the progressive to help make our lives faster and easier, but that doesn't mean that it has to be an absolute demon at getting things done. And I think that's really important because when I'm loading precision ammo, I want to pay attention to the details. Is it getting bumped correctly? Am I getting the primer seated correctly? Am I doing all of the things that I need to in order to achieve the success on target that I'm looking for? So let's start first with our sizing die and our mandrel. And I should mention at the same time, I'm actually going to be decapping because I have a decapper pin in my sizing die. And I also have primers in my Dillon here, and I will be seating with those because that's actually how I seat all of my primers, is on my Dillon. So let's give this a whirl here, and we're just gonna work through a few of these. Okay, so I'm gonna push back down to get the primers seated. We're gonna put another one in here. And at this point, we are sizing and running through a mandrel. Keep in mind, I'm on a little bit of a shaky work table. Normally, this would be on a very solid workbench. And we're just gonna keep moving the shell holder forward, right? And I can tell you 100%, oh, I guess we're out of primers. Everything that we are going to be doing is done on this machine, really because I have 100% confidence in how these things work. Like, I don't ever question what my Dillon is doing because I am very confident in achieving good success with this. So I have gone through and now mandreled and expanded a few of these. And I know the next question is going to be, well, how did those actually size? So let me go ahead and just wipe off this lube here, and then we will give these a quick measure. Let's zero out our gauge. So we're gonna put our first piece of brass in, and what I'm looking for is consistency. So once I have that brass in, we are going to zero that out. And now let's put in the next piece of brass, 1/2 thousandths, right? Half a thousandths. And just for fun, I'll go ahead and grab one more here, just so we have a base and 3 to read off of here. And, whoops, 1/2 thousandths right there. So really consistent sizing. Again, I'm super confident with this process, so it's sort of one of those things where, like, I don't even think about it anymore. I just know what I can get out of this. And again, because of the way the 550 is built, because it is giving a consistent push with that ram, and that the base of your brass is really, consistently getting there, I think that is the biggest key towards the success that you just saw. Now that we've looked at the consistency of the shoulder bump, it's time to look at the primer depth consistency. I have a lot of confidence in my Dillon when it comes to priming, and I'm going to show you why. If I take a piece of brass here and I am going to just zero this out on my comparator, now if I take additional pieces of brass here, 1 thousandths, 1 thousandths, what are we at here? 1 thousandths. And then if I come back to this original one, you can see it's back to 0. So the fact that I can go ahead and get 1 thousandths variance on all of this stuff is really, really good. Oh, that one, where are we at here? That one might be just a little bit more, 1.5. But I can tell you that as long as I'm in that margin of error, I'm really happy. And the fact that I'm doing it on a progressive gives me a lot of confidence as well. Now that we have done all of that, it's time to take out this tool head and convert it over to the loading process, which is going to be the next step. Now we're going to get started on the actual loading, and this is honestly a pretty simple process. I would say for me, this is the probably less stressful side of the reloading. Doing the sizing where you've got more pressures, you're really making sure that you're consistent with your dwell times, things like that, can be a little more stressful on the brass prep side. The loading side, I think, is pretty fun. It goes pretty quickly for me. What we're going to do is we're going to start by putting a piece of brass here in station 1. Now, station 1 does not have a die in it currently. However, if you did have something in station 1, you'd want to make sure you pull the handle to engage whatever it was. Maybe you're going to run a mandrel before you decide to put powder in on this station or something like that. And remember, we have also primed, so we don't need to push the bar forward to prime because there's already a primer in there. Now, this is a sort of up to the user experience. If you wanted to, you could have saved priming for this stage after the brass prep. I happen to do it during the brass prep stage, but that's the beauty of the 550 here, is it gives you some options on when you want to do a couple of these stages. I could have easily also held off on the mandrel, going in there and opening up the necks until after I had trimmed, and I know people who do that as well. So again, that's going to be more of a personal decision on the reloading side. There are precision ways to do all of those steps in slightly different orders, but in this particular case, I've already primed, therefore I am not going to engage the handle forward. I'm now going to rotate it over, put a new piece of brass in, pull up, and you'll see that it is now engaging with that brush die. That's just making sure that no matter what's happened before this point, whether it's a mandrel, whether it's trimming, that it is getting any little debris out of that neck to ensure a proper seating force. Now, we're going to rotate this over one more time, insert another piece of brass, raise it up, and I have some powder that is ready. We are simply going to dump it in. We're going to let that go back and get some more powder. We're going to bring that down. And I will say that when it comes to reloading in a precision fashion, no matter what you're doing, you want to take your time. This is not a rush job. The Dillon and the fact that it is a progressive is helping you save time because you have multiple stations that are occurring at one time. That does not mean this needs to be a speed fest. This isn't just slamming through as fast as you can. We want to make sure that the steps are done properly. We want to make sure that the bullets are seated properly. And we want to make sure that the powder, when it goes in, isn't getting jostled around or knocked out in some way. And this is true no matter how you're dropping your powder. So we're going to put a bullet on top now. We're going to rotate this over. We're going to put another piece of brass in. We now have our powder ready once again. We're going to raise this up and drop the powder. Now at this point, I have completed all of the steps that I have dies for. I've done my brush, I've done my powder, and I've done my seating. So all three are now occurring every time I pull the handle. Again, the beauty of a progressive. Now I can lower this down, put a bullet on. I'm going to rotate it. That's now going to drop my bullet out. And again, for anybody that's used a 550 or a 750, this is pretty common sense stuff. But I'm really trying to emphasize the fact that when you are really trying to eke out that last nth of precision, you need to take your time and just work through it. So this is just a nice casual process where we are letting the powder dispenser do its thing. We are casually coming down, rotating, bringing a new piece of brass in, bringing it up. We would be waiting for our powder at this point, and we're just gonna rinse and repeat that process. I'm gonna go ahead and load up some of these rounds, and then we are going to head out to the range and see how they actually perform on target at 300 yards. Before we head out to the range, there's one more important thing we need to do. Let's make sure our rounds were seated properly and consistently. So we're gonna go ahead and grab these rounds. We've got our comparator. Make sure it's zeroed out for us. All right, so we've got it zeroed out. And what you can see here, 22910. 22905, right there. What do we got? 22910. and 22910. All right, so there's those. Is there one more in here? No, there is one more. 22905. So all within half a thousandths of each other. You know what? I'll take that any day of the week. So now that we've done that, it's time to get out to the range and see what we can do with them. All right, here we go. That's the first group. And 3/4 inch group at 300 yards. All right, let's do another group here. All right. All right, last group. All right, that's it. So we got a 7-inch group, 1.3. I'm back from the range, and I wish I could tell you I'm surprised by the results, but at the end of the day, I am very confident loading on a Dillon. You saw that all of these groups were sub half minute. Now we saw the groups, and if you watched some of the shooting, you saw that I had some of the other data up there, but I want to talk a little bit about the actual bullet speeds, which points to the consistency again of how this ammo was loaded. You can see that across our loads we had an average speed of right in that 2850 to 2857 or 8, somewhere right in there. So across multiple tests, very consistent averages, very consistent SDs. And while I don't really pay attention to ES anymore, the ESs were very consistent. So all of that's telling me that in the sizing, the expanding, obviously the powder coming in is consistent, and the bullet seating, I am getting an all-around consistent loading process, thus giving me, again, even more confidence in loading on a Dillon. So when we kind of reflect on what did we do differently, how did we get a little bit different performance out of a 550 compared to maybe normal loading, a lot of it comes down to, on its just most simple basis, breaking up the processes so that you are interfering with the particular steps as little as possible while still maintaining the speed and ease of a progressive. In our case, we took the brass prep and we moved it to its own tool head. This gave us really just all we were doing is applying pressure for the sizing. The mandrel does not really take the same amount of force. Therefore, we could concentrate on pulling the handle and getting a consistent shoulder bump. We also were giving it a consistent push on the primer seating. And then by not having the powder dropping during that process, there's no chance that we're going to be jerking the press or having any powder bounce out because we're trying to pull a case out that maybe didn't get as much lube on it, or it got stuck just a little bit and it kind of pops out. Nobody likes that, but when you separate them, you now don't have to worry about that, because as you saw with the seating tool head that we put in, all we had to do was bring it up. It was effortless with the brush and then the powder, and the only force being applied again was for the seating depth. So one tool head, force is for the shoulder bump. The next tool head, your force is for the seating. We're separating out those two. And I will just tell you, if nothing else, that is the absolute best thing you can do if you want to get precision loads done on the press. We talked about high caliber dies, making sure that you're getting really well honed, caliber specific, well-made dies that are going to give you that consistency that you're looking for. And we are doing this on a bone stock 550. Nothing's been modified. And while there are definitely other videos out there on how to kind of modify the 550 even further, whether it's the shell plates or the tool heads or other things like that, I really hope this video shows you that an out-of-the-box 550 can 100% get you into the tiny group club without having to spend a ton of money or do a ton of modifications. With that, as always, I hope you get out and shoot, have some fun, and we will talk later.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're watching Ultimate Reloader on TV and want to take advantage of free resources, exclusives, and hot deals, just hold your camera phone up to the QR code, tap on the link, fill out the information, boom, you're getting Ultimate Reloader emails. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, where we've got unrestricted content, and Instagram. Make sure to follow us on all those channels. Ultimate Reloader also has a commercial solutions division serving law enforcement, the military, and the gun industry. We have some unique capabilities, including a comprehensive suite of recoil testing and evaluation capabilities, trigger profiling, and more. Thanks again for watching.